Welcome to the most forward-thinking, inspirational podcast in this reality. The show designed to challenge everything we've been taught. If you've ever felt there had to be more to life, more to existence, then you're listening to the right podcast. Time to open your mind and dive in. This is the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast.
And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. I said in the past few episodes that we lacked a little bit in December, which is true. There was a lot going on, even into the beginning of January. I myself came down with the ridiculous sickness that's gotten everybody going and riled. So it slowed me down, but I'm telling you, we're going gung-ho. We're going to hit 2025 with basically all we've got, and we're starting out fresh with somebody we've never spoken to before, an individual whom I've come across through a friend of a friend who is remarkable. What they're doing, what the company's doing, what everything's going on over there, to me is it's outstanding. And I think more of this needs to be done. So I'm really happy to have with us today and to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, my newest good friend, Scott, from The Poverty Solution, based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam.
So the stuff that you and I have been working on, we're putting together some really neat information that's going to be handed out to the masses en masse very soon. We can talk about that a little bit later if you want to, but I'm so fascinated with that you saw a need for change, saw a need to challenge it. I'm curious of your origin story. We all want a good origin story. What made you, or what brought you here? How did we get here in your life?
Yeah, so I went to school to become an architect. I always had this thing about, why isn't this school designed better? Why is this store the function? I don't know. As a kid, even I would just like, everything could be better. Why isn't it better?
Right.
I had ideas about that. So I thought I'll become an architect and build really highly functional buildings that are better than what I'm used to being in, starting with schools and universities and whatever. And then I went to architectural school and I didn't like it. It just wasn't my personality. So I was at a loss, and a friend of mine, Catholic priest, actually says, why don't you go volunteer in a homeless shelter? And I'm like, what's that? I was raised in the burbs. I don't even know what a homeless shelter was. I was 18. Right. And I went there, and it left an imprint, like a big one, like, oh my God, this is just around the corner for me. And look at all this. And again, my mind's going, well, why isn't this better? Why do we have this going on? So I went to, I got out of school and I got a business degree, but it was a lot of sociology, and it was aimed at more social entrepreneurialism. And so as soon as I got out of college, I created jobs for myself. And I ended up, that led to working at an agency. And they said, you're going to see 40 people a week and interview them and give them financial assistance because we're a charity and we got some money. So They described these situations, and I got my suburban headset on going, what's the budget limit? And they're like $1,000. I said, for every family, that's the cap? No, that's your monthly budget for everybody.
So I'm going to see 40 families, you had $1,000.
I'm going to see 160 families a month for $1,000. And I thought, what kind of a deal is this? You're telling all your churches that you're giving to the poor. Well, this is a joke. So anyway, I trained a bunch of volunteers and said, you do this work because I'm not going to do this. And I'm going to go figure out how to fix the system. So I'm at a cocktail party and some guy says to me, I said, this whole system needs overhauled. There's no place to refer people to get them out of poverty. I mean, if I give them 50 or $100, so what? It solves the problem for a minute. What is the long game here? And there isn't one. And I had been to state conferences at this point. I'd been in this new job for 3 months, and I could feel like there's just nothing going on about getting people out of poverty. So he says, why don't you go up to these foundations in Cleveland? I have a contact. And I said, what's a foundation? Well, I was in my 20s. I didn't know any of this stuff, but I did have a sense that.
So this was 3 years ago then, in your 20s?
It was like, a couple of years ago.
Ladies, we're on video
Last
here.
century.
Scott is definitely a little bit older than 33. So there's certainly more wise. So that joke may not have carried well over the audio
Yeah, when you
waves.
see the visual, I get it. So yeah, many years ago. So anyway, I went to the foundation and explained what I wanted to do. And she later said, I didn't know what you wanted to do really, but I liked your enthusiasm. So she gave me money, and I ended up getting this money to go out and build a new program. And so that was how it got started. I just was frustrated with systems in general. And then I landed in this job around poverty issues. And I thought, here's something where I could do good and use my business background to make. And so ever since then, I've been building these projects around the country that get X number of families out of poverty. But then all that research that we do goes to policymakers and tries to change. I mean, what's out there right now is a giant poverty management system. It's just maintained poverty for the last 60 years without making any dent at
Right.
all,
Right.
coast to coast, right? And what we're creating now is a poverty alleviation system. It's accountable to reducing poverty rates. It's accountable to getting people out of poverty, which for whatever reason is a radical idea.
I was just about to touch on that. I mean, you're shaking the system up here because first and foremost, we ask the tough questions over here. But it's more of an awareness. It's more of an idea that if you think or if one thinks the powers that be want us out of poverty, that's false. Do you see that? I mean, as somebody who's a complete outsider coming into this for the past few years, are you noticing illogical pushback, if that makes sense?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I don't actually, I've been in this field for 40 years, and I don't feel that there is a general intention about keeping people in poverty. I think what you have is look at the healthcare system. To me, the allopathic system idea won, right? And so people don't get well usually with just dealing with their symptoms. You had the holistic stuff lost the politics, and so allopathic became. And the same thing happened in the anti-poverty business. It's allopathic. Oh, you have a housing problem? Well, maybe I'll give you a HUD voucher, or you have a food problem. Here's some stamps, or you have a whatever, fill in the blank, but it's just bits and pieces that are random and fragmented, and all of that adds up to 1.1 trillion a year in the US being spent on stuff, subsidies, but no one is getting paid to get people out of poverty.
Mhm.
Even the workforce development programming in the US is under 10 billion a year. And if you think, well, you have a 1.1 trillion dollar public assistance programming, 80 different programs providing these random bits of fragmented stuff, how much you should spend on getting people off of it. And should the system be designed to get out? Now, theirs were just lazy administration has taken over, and habits and culture, all of that has taken over, and it keeps the poverty rate where it's at. And the business community never really needed this solved. They had so many baby boomers. There was no reason to deal with a 15% poverty rate. Who cares? I don't need them. So you don't, when you look at our system in the US, you've got business basically driving most activity in government with its campaign lobbying abilities. And so who's driving the bus? Business. And they don't need, but now they do. This is the first time ever that solving poverty could actually be seen as an economic development strategy that's pretty well needed because they can't get enough qualified workers. And a
What do you?
poverty management system prevents people from being qualified
Yeah.
because it's screwed up. It keeps people in it. So it's just to me been a bunch of like what have been the motives from different groups that would suddenly change the poverty situation. And those managing poverty get paid to manage poverty. They get paid to give people a service or a unit or whatever, and not give people who don't deserve it, aren't eligible, money. So they're just basically in the game of compliance,
Um,
getting people
what do
out.
you, I have so many questions about poverty and in your company, your approach and what you're doing. Are you? I know you're not like a one-stop shop because everything is characteristic and demographic and all that sort of stuff. But there's poverty where people are homeless. Like there's just people don't even want to try. There's poverty where people are they can't afford rent and food. And
Right.
there's massive poverty, like 80% of Canada, where we are essentially one paycheck away from screwed.
Right.
Um, I read somewhere, heard somewhere that families are 9 square meals away from chaos. And what I mean by that is if you miss 9 meals, a society will collapse. And Canada's on the brink of that. The majority of Canada is in a position where um, we cannot afford a $7 loaf of bread. We cannot live on $60,000 a year when rent everywhere is $2,500. We are being bled to death. Our gasoline up here is uh, what is it? It's $1.60 a liter, so
Sure.
$6 a gallon, 6.50 a gallon. Um, and insurance is astronomical for anyone trying to drive. We've got a political party that's in complete disarray, and they're trying to basically drive a wedge between everybody. Your insurance to drive a car. A prime example: my car payment is $700. My insurance payment is $690. So, I mean, I say all these things, and I'm curious to know if you if your approach and if you are tiered, if you have a tier system, a tier problem solving system, or sort of where you stand, not so much the company right now, and maybe we're speaking ahead of the turkey here, but are you running a multifaceted, a multi-layered approach, a system for most people, or do you have one in your head?
Okay, well, that's a lot. So let me just break that down
Huge loaded question. Sorry
I
about
hear. Okay.
that.
First of all, the U.S. and Canada, it's running, kind of a semi-democratic oligarchy, and it has capitalism as one of its ways of doing things,
Right.
and not taught capitalism coming right out of the gate. So think about you're going to live in the ocean, but there's going to be no swimming lessons, and you're not a fish. So I think what you want to do with people is give them financial literacy 101 as powerfully as you would give them math, history, any other subject that you think they need to make it. Because without money knowledge, how money works, how to save it, how to build a habit around looking at what you're doing, thinking about buying stuff before you buy it. All of that is absolutely critical to make it in the US or Canada without having financial problems haunt you the rest of your life. So that's first thing.
Mhm.
Secondly, the entire economic systems in both the US and Canada are designed to feather the beds of the top 1-5%. I mean, it's
Right.
everything is moving that direction. It's just what can we do to make you more comfortable at the top of the heap here? And government has complied with that because there isn't campaign finance reform. If there was campaign finance reform and you put caps on how much money can be spent on getting candidates elected, you take out the super money machine effort that's going into our government regulatory systems. You would basically have a much healthier government. Think about society having three things going on, and if people would stay in their lane, all would be better. So just think about this idea of what's the purpose of government? It's really to protect our rights. That's its main thing. Protect our rights to do what? To live our life in the civic sector as we wish. With you're not going to hurt anybody. Let me just be who I am, right? And over in business, if you think about its center of gravity being mutuality, when it's win-win, you do business. And so if government could protect me so I could go and make my way in business, and then it would protect me so I can live the life with the beliefs and the things I want to do as long as I'm not hurting others, then it's doing its job. But when it bleeds into these other lanes or these sectors get out of their lanes, all hell breaks loose. So
Right.
think about what's business done. It's gone into government. It's gone into government and influenced that sector so it's not protecting the average citizen. It's protecting the top campaign donors. That's the problem. I mean, that's the biggest problem that I've seen over the years is just the influence of business and money in politics. It never gets cleaned up. If you cap the finance donation, the amount of donations that can go into campaigning from different groups, if you cap that, you would have a different set of people in Congress. Secondly, you've got people in the civic sector over influencing how I'm going to live my life and going into government and trying to change all that. It's like, no, just stay out of that. So anyway, that's it's to me, my fantasy world, those sectors function in a balanced way, doing their job. Mutuality in business land, protection of rights up in government, and the freedom to express yourself in the civic sector. And everyone should be, that would balance things out. And you would find that you wouldn't have as much poverty because the purpose of government would be to make sure that the most number of people and citizens would be economically stable, right? Have access to the marketplace, be able to live their lives the way they want to. That would be imagine if government had that as its priority rather than getting reelected by wealthy donors in corporate structures that have an agenda. And until I don't see. So anyway, let's just say that may never happen in my lifetime or yours, but it's what should happen. What do you do in the meantime? What's the workaround? You've got to get savvy about your expenses, I think, and you have to get savvier about making money if you want to make it in this deal. No one is going to make this easier. No one's agenda right now is to make it easier for you. That's the challenge. So for all listeners, do you really need to have what you think you have to be happy? Because if you can put your footprint down another notch or two and get the hell out of these arrangements where you're paying huge interest rates, you have more house than you need, more car that you need, more stuff than you need. That's one place where you can control a certain amount of activity is in the spending.
Well, we've been taught, spend beyond your means. Like that is literally what everyone's taught. You don't need a three-car garage, but you've got one. That kind of thing.
A million messages a day to tell you to spend right now, get what you want now, pay later.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nuts. It's an addictive thing.
Well, it is. And then of course, I mean, even small stuff too, like Amazon. Amazon's targeting the invention of Amazon is they're like, oh, it's so convenient. We can have things sent straight to us. But there's deceitful math behind the Amazon algorithm, which is they know the addiction. They know that you're more interested in waiting for the thing or expecting the thing, being excited for the thing. Like you click that buy button because the most joy you've got is waiting on that thing to arrive. It's like Christmas every day. There was a documentary even on this, the wasteful world of Amazon, but it's intentional. Like they want this financial slavery, as it were. You see it sort of being pushed in that direction. Now, I don't want to drag your company through any sort of conspiracy, sort of as I say these things, because that's not what we're talking about here. But I mean, you're up against it. I mean, you're trying to battle poverty in almost in a world, like I said before, that seems to be hell bent on creating poverty.
Well, just going back to what we can control and can't control, right? I can control my ideas about this and put them out there that I think these, a healthier world eventually has these sectors balanced in these particular ways. And I can always just keep talking about that. Good. But in this project that I have in Tennessee, it's a $25 million project that we helped them get funded. We designed an application for them, sent it to they sent it to the state of Tennessee, and they won an award. They beat out, there were 80 applicants and 6 got these $25 million awards. And this means that we now have 700 families enrolled in this pilot. So what can we do differently? What do we have control of to do differently? And what does the poverty solution offer another community like this? Well, if you change the game and say it's about this family, Jane and 3 kids, getting completely out of poverty in the next couple of years, and that's the game. Okay, we want to get them to a place where they have X amount of money coming from earned income. Or we've got some kind of a break from the state where there's a hybrid of you can get Medicaid, but you also can make 35, 40,000 a year and take care of the kids and whatever. So let's just say that's the end game. We can affect that. And we can also raise money, which we have, to support them as they're making their way off these public assistance programs that are not designed to easily do that, because if they exit, they get they lose their income or their subsidies way too quickly. It's disproportionate to what they make. It's called the cliff effect. But we can also send the urgency and the data from our project over to the state and say, you've got to get to DC and change this cliff effect. Make the entrance and exit ramps off of these programs easier. Use algorithms to figure out how to create a hybrid approach so that earned income plus subsidies allow people to make it. And here's the cost of housing. Do something about that. Here's the cost of childcare, transportation, healthcare insurance. Those 5 things need to be fixed and dealt with. And it's going to be forever a blend of government funding and private earned income, right? The other thing we can do, Adam, is that, 2 breadwinners is better than 1.
Right.
So when people, again, let's just go back to what are we teaching kids? I think you need to teach them money and you need to teach them communications. You can go a long ways by understanding how to work on a team so you're a better team player and you make more money, and also how to be in a relationship, especially if you think you're going to go have kids. Because the fastest way into poverty is to get yourself separated and then now have 2 households and 1 breadwinner.
Well, this is one of the things that's been talked about with regards to the poverty that I've been looking into. And, it does sound like I'm on, or I keep trying to bring up a conspiracy. And what I actually have noticed in this is you keep circling or bringing it back to here's how we solve what we can solve. It's not a matter of thinking or thinking too big or thinking too grandiose. It's a matter of saying these are the issues. Let's get into it. But it's been stated that, the idea of sending the kids to school, sending the parents to work, dividing the household entirely, and then sending those kids off, and this whole thing about, you've got mom and dad, 2 kids, and especially if the parents get divorced, which is around 70% of the time now, you've now got 1 family unit that could have taken care of 1 household. And you've got the daughter over here in one town, the son in another town, the mom over in one house, and the dad in one house. That's 4 houses that need to be taken care of by a family that could have done it all from 1. And
Yeah,
it's almost
and
like
money is usually the thing that breaks up families faster than anything. The inability to manage money, to manage spending, to resist the predatory lending advertisement that comes their way day in and day out all day long, and
yeah,
the pressure of kids who are also wanting, the Jordan shoes. So I want my $300 gym shoes. I'm like, really? You're like 8 years old. Okay. Anyhow, all of that creates this pressure, and then the communication falls apart, and suddenly they're having a crisis reaction, which screws them for years. So I think what we are, and then we haven't talked about drug use and all of that, but I mean, when you get into a community where there isn't great job opportunities, it's easier to say, oh, let's just be high. I'm just going to be high. It feels better than actually dealing with the despair of being in a community that doesn't offer the kind of jobs that allows me to buy the houses in those communities
yeah,
or even pay the rent in those communities. And to them, I say, okay, you can spend the rest of your life high and all the problems that come with that, or you can make a plan to leave this community into another place that actually has more opportunity.
yeah.
Because if you're banging your head up against a wall in a small town that doesn't have any good job opportunities, move. What's that take? A plan and support. So, to I resist going victim at any level. I think at the individual level, it's a train wreck. I think if you think about societal issues and you go victim on that, it doesn't help. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still people that have moved themselves into powers of decision making, but who is it? It's a person.
Mhm.
So I could become one of those people. You could become one of those people. We could vote in other kind of people with different kind of values into those roles. We could put, you know, so just I was noticing colleagues of mine. I hike with a bunch of people, and they're like complaining about their election results. I'm like, well, did you get on a plane and go to one of the swing states and campaign the hell out of that place for the candidate you wanted? No, you're complaining about it afterwards. So it's a victim position. It's annoying actually to hear about it. It's like, yeah, if you had gone to Arizona and campaigned that, and I'd have more empathy. But to be an armchair whiner, no, I don't want to hear about it. I
No,
don't like the result, but I didn't put any effort into changing the result. So I'm off of it already. It's like that's what it is. but I'm putting my energy where I can put it, which is I have this project that could show how to get 700 families out of poverty and change the welfare system in Tennessee. And guess what? That could be used to change things in West Virginia, Montana, fill in the blank. I could take what I'm working on right now and change a big chunk of how the world functions in this country and maybe up in Canada too. Who knows? So I'm putting my energy there. I can control that.
How do people typically find you? As in, like you said, you've got some programs here. You're in Albuquerque, but you work in every state. How are you found? How can people that I mean, I know that there are boards and there are initiatives that are, hey, we're looking for something, we're trying to do something. Like what have you found? And I know going on podcasts and getting your message out there is certainly one way of being heard and seen, but when people need to talk to you,
Yeah, you should just
what are
Google out of poverty projects, right? Like who
yeah,
does, who, and we show up at the top of the list. When you look at what's got results, so I founded Circles USA, which is a nonprofit, and it's got 80 chapters in 25 states, I think, and some
perfect.
stuff up in Canada, Lambton County, right? And we're one of the few places that got results. We can show that, earned income went up by X percent. We can tell you how many people we got out of poverty over the years. And uh, they find us that way. And they can find us now. So I turned that over to some other folks, and they're managing what we had done with those chapters. And people can always go to Circles USA if they want to look at that program. But what I've always wanted Circles USA to become is what the poverty solution is now. It's a macro solution. It's saying, look, if you take 10 families and try to get them out of poverty in Bisbee, Arizona, everything that's wrong in Bisbee for poverty is going to show up with those 10 families. They're going to bump into every systemic problem you got.
Right.
And we'll be able to determine what it might look like if you had a system that would help them get out of poverty and into jobs. So that I always wanted that for Circles USA, but we never really had the opportunity to go big until this opportunity in Tennessee happened, and it just serendipitously happened that right after I left Circles USA and just started to do some consulting.
Hmm.
But people find me typically, through TED Talks or whatever they're looking for around poverty issues
That's
or
amazing.
word of mouth.
Yeah. No, I love that, and I love the idea too that for you to be found, and whenever your phone rings, whenever the bat phone goes off, you can make these connections, and you've got answers right away. I know that there are people that have dealt with quote unquote poverty on certain levels that are listening to this show right now, and they're going to say something like, "Well, hey, I can reach out to so and so who I know is doing it right here," and I'll ask you for them because they're not on the show. But if somebody were to reach out to you from anywhere and be like, "Hey, I'm part of a community that's working on this, this, and this," and these are the people that are the higher ups, the government officials that are doing this, this, and this. How do we get more information from you, or how do we work
Well,
with
they
you on
just
this
need to
sort of
go to
stuff?
the website, go to thepovertysolution.com. The way we're working, Adam, we have been under the radar for this last 2 years because this pilot was a game changer, and we're trying to get the toolbox that we have refined based on what actually is going to work. This is in the Upper Cumberland region between Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Nashville. So that those 14 counties, they're rural, they're some of it's Appalachia, and it's a pretty tough place to make happen what we're making happen. So I wanted to just get as much detail into our poverty toolkit as we could before we made ourselves available to other places. But we're going to be reaching out, and put the word out. In fact, we're having a conference in May in Tennessee to showcase what's been learned. So people can sign up and watch that. They can stream in and look at it, ask questions. But we will be ready to share what we've learned starting next month. So if they call us, we would just have it's a free conversation about whether or not it's a good idea to even look at this point in time. And if they say they want to take the next step, we do an assessment. It's a minimal fee, but it allows us to go in and say, here's everything you would need to put together to do this work. And we would say, look, out of these I don't have the assessment in front of me, but it's probably going to
Yeah.
be 35 conditions. You have 15 of these conditions greenlit. Most of them are yellow or red, right? And so what we would recommend is you we'll give you a document that shows you a planning process that you could try to go get some money to get done. And the planning process, the point of it, which you would hire us to help facilitate, would get you greenlit on all these issues before you invite people into a pilot. And the pilot needs to be funded, right? So it also produces the planning period would produce a proposal that you can use to go get some funding. Anyway, we're super thoughtful about making sure that all these conditions are in place that we saw in our Tennessee work and that we've seen in other initiatives that we've taken on, and they didn't materialize very well because, well, these conditions were in place.
Right.
So I don't want to waste people's time. I don't want to waste my time. I'm way too old to be wasting any time.
Yeah.
So I'm only going to work with places that make sense for us to do work in, and it's still going to just be a handful for a while until we really see what we've got going here. But then, the sky's the limit in terms of what we'll have to offer all the communities that want to start doing something differently. The first thing, I think, Adam, the very first thing that people need to think about is who are the champions in my community that want to reduce the poverty rate, that have the wherewithal to move money around to make something like that happen. And if I'm not that person, can I get that person into a conversation? And then I think, that's who you try to bring on to a conversation with us.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that. I mean, it's like, it almost sounds harsh when you say things like, well, we can't help everybody right away, but that's 100% true. I mean, there's that old adage, you can't, if you haven't helped yourself, you can't help anyone, period. And you guys are in the process of doing the most deducing you can do in a short amount of time while working in live functioning scenarios. So yeah, you're going to want to take, you're going to want to take a small echo chamber and you're going to want to take a small challenge chamber and obviously create from there. And the more you do it, the more I would assume it could be refined. The more it's refined, the better it would work for all environments.
Yeah, there are universal things that we're learning that are good for every community in the U.S. and Canada, from what I've experienced up in Canada. And then there are customizable things that are just unique to these communities that we're working with. Our entry point is unique. How are we coming in through the mayor, through the county commissioners? Are we coming in through a business that has a big presence in a place? Are we coming in through another government agency? Is it a private set of churches that collaborate together? Whatever. Given that entry, we have to assess their channels to make change happen. And if the channels aren't there, they're going to have to build them. If they can't build them, we can't do any work.
Yeah.
We're not going to just try to get 8 families out of poverty. I did all that with Circles. I mean, Circles is great. And it's great for 8 to 10 families a year, or 12 or 14 or 15. But the channels to big change have to be in place for our company to get interested in doing work in a place.
Yeah. You can't just go in there and get shit results. You got to go in there and you got to show that it can be done. And this is one of the things that I know a lot of people get upset about.
Well, to be clear, getting 8 to 10 families is not a shit result. It's a good result.
100%. Yeah, no,
what I'm saying is that you got 20 that just went into poverty while you're doing that. So you have to change the system.
Yeah.
You have to be in the chain, or it's just a hobby. I mean, it's a hobby. And I want to make a difference in these systems. And that's why it's so important that we can guerrilla network our way to the people that have influence.
And it seems to me too that would be the case. You get in there and you fix the 8 families, and like you said, 20 more families fall in as you're doing this. But if you can fix these 8 families, and that's the demographic, that's the target, then theoretically the knowledge that you gain from that family, those 8 families, applies to the next 8 families. That information with the new information can apply to more, and eventually you want to get out of the individual helping of the families and you want to get into changing the entirety of the system itself, which is what from my understanding, what you're talking about right now, which is, and what I was saying earlier was that, you don't want to get shit results is what I was saying. But what I was referring to is that you want to do, from my understanding, you want to do what you can to make sure that the results are accurate and the results are consistent when it comes to growth and expanding and changing.
Yeah. And so another way of thinking about where I want to go next is this Tennessee project offers a an important pilot to learn about a lot of things, the politics of creating collaboration across these agency lines, how to really enroll, engage people that have been on public assistance, what to do about these employers that think that they can get by with 12 bucks an hour and can't, but they keep trying, and then they have this high churn rate that doesn't show up on their liability page for some reason, but like it's 5 grand to train somebody again. I mean, why keep doing all that? Anyhow, all these lessons learned, it creates a certain credibility, right? That then we can take into conversations with highly influential people in DC and in Nashville, as far as Tennessee is concerned, and say, look, it's a ton of money to be spending on Medicaid every year without having a formal exit ramp off of it.
Right.
You can't have people, you're going to have this phantom workforce, people that would work, could work, should work, want to work, not going to work because they're going to not be able to afford to take the pay or the increased hours because you're not set up an exit ramp. This is such a amazing conversation to be even having, but we got this guy in Utah, a better job. So he's making 14 an hour, but he's taking care of his 3 kids by himself, not another breadwinner in that situation. And he's going to lose childcare assistance with all of them if he takes the employer loves him. He wants to push him to, I don't know, I think it was 15 or 16 an hour. The net result was minus $700
Yeah.
a month for taking the raise, which made the employer nuts. In this case, he just pushed the wage up high enough to cover that, which is an unusual response for an employer, I think. So it's not the way you want it. But why wouldn't the state and the feds want to have that guy working at a higher earned income level? Why would you take all the child care away when you could just take it, you know, at the rate at which he's making earned income? It's not that hard. It's not rocket science to figure that stuff out. It just takes someone doing the calculus to get it worked out. And when you think about this 1.1 trillion that we spend on public assistance programming, oh my God. I mean, if you were a grocery store, you would spend the least amount of money at research and development, probably of any industry. High tech, you might spend 30%. You might spend a 1% if you're a grocery store.
Hmm.
But in this business, it's 0.0001%. I mean, there's no powerful R&D. You could say, oh, the philanthropic community, it's doing what's working. No, it's not. It's spending about 90 billion on this issue, but it's all over the place. It's not coordinated. These are a bunch of private foundations with their own agendas in their own places, doing their own things. And there's no coordinated R&D at the government level to reduce the nut on public assistance subsidies, especially Medicaid, which is half of that bill. And I think the opportunity is like bring this kind of coherence into DC and say, change this.
It's a shame
Put
you couldn't
more
waltz in there
R&D.
yourself and just take up that desk, you know?
I don't know if I'm the electable type.
Oh, they wouldn't want me sitting back there.
I wouldn't want to either. But I mean, I do think the poverty solution and we have an unusual coherence. So just to kind of bring it all together here, when somebody calls us, one of the first things we can add value to is coherence. You want to have a sense of you're in a poverty management system that functions in a particular way that gives you the same crappy results every year. You need to just get a new system going. Don't try to fight that. Start something new that is accountable to getting people all the way out of poverty and accountable to eventually reducing the poverty rate. Well, how many people do you need to get out of poverty to change the rate or to change this new system? Maybe it's only 10%. Maybe that is the magic tipping point number. There's some evidence to that effect. So pick a footprint, find out what 10% of the poverty there would look like, how many people that might be, 50, 100, 500, 5,000 families, I don't know. And then build a new system to support them and put some new money into it and go chase it. We can help you go chase it. People like coherence. And so if you can get them coherent, they'll start being a magnet for new resources and then things can happen.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, and I agree with that. But I'm like I said before, like I'm fascinated and blown away with this because it is such a pressing issue that it would seem to me that it could be solved. It could be resolved. Poverty could be abolished. Um,
Totally. We have enough money to do it. We actually know how to do it. It's really the leadership, right? It's getting the leadership that's necessary to create this new system, to have this be the charge. We're going to create a new system. That needs to happen. And, our hope is that we can show some efficacy in this Tennessee project and then get a foot in the door to a conversation that really makes a difference.
well, I think that's next. I think that's the case. I think it starts with this episode. I think the right people are going to hear this show, and we're going to step into it. I say
Sounds good.
facetiously, but also at the same time, possibly not. I mean,
Yeah.
this show has
We've
quite the.
already stepped into it, Adam. We're
Yeah,
stepping into it deeply right now, but
that's it.
we want the leaders to step into it and say, okay, this is good fertilizer. Let's go.
And exactly, yeah. I mean, and you're in a spot too right now where we need a win.
Yeah.
Canada, North America, the people need a win, and you're bringing one. And that's a really neat thing that's coming. And I think that in the changing of the guard, you're already seeing certain algorithmic things change with regards to the darker side of politics lightening up. You're seeing RFK talking about getting rid of GMOs. You're seeing certain things that may not seem like it applies, but it does. You're seeing certain figureheads make certain changes that speak to a language of actual change and not just cloud talk and pillow fight politically. So I mean, I think that we're standing, like you said, you're already marching in, and I think that we're standing in a spot right now where you have you've definitely got the moral ground in this one, and B, humanity needs this win. So I think you've got a lot of the right factors working on your
Yeah, but it's
side.
also economically feasible, right? I mean, what we're doing is potentially saving a ridiculous amount of money that's being wasted on a system that's producing the wrong kind of results.
Yeah,
Keeping people in a public assistance mode, it's keeping people as victims. It's blowing money left and right because it's not accountable.
right,
And what we're talking about gets people jobs. It helps the economy by having businesses be able to sustain their business and grow it. A lot of rural communities have to mine the talents of the people in their own backyard now. So they've got to learn what to do to qualify people that in the past have been hard to place,
right.
hard to employ. This is the new learning curve, and this is what we're about. So finally, there's enough, I think, mutual benefit between business, government, and the private sector to want to make something like this happen. So good.
And we're
All
we're
right.
at the precipice of that again too. Like I think to myself, things like the workforce, i.e., the boomers, are holding on, but falling off as well, tooth and nail, like an entire class. And then we've got the under boomers, the Gen Xers who are also aging or aging out or not, or I don't even know how to say it, like willing to make change. So we're standing on the edge of something big. I mean, etherically, you can feel it.
10,000 of us, you're turning 65 every day,
Yeah,
10,000.
yeah,
And we're leaving the workforce. And we did not have enough kids to replace our generation. It's the first time that ever happened. So it's an interesting moment where there's a lack of qualified folks. And the baby boomers, you got time on your hands, you got time, talent, treasure. Apply it.
yeah.
Apply all this now. Don't think about retiring and just hanging out on a golf course. Get off the course for a while and do some of this cool work. Because I mean, that's what's fun about this for me. I don't need any of this to really work out for my own personal situation. I'm doing it because I want to see the world change, right? And so it's a very pure motive for me, and it makes me fearless about saying no to clients that we're not a good fit for whatever reason. So I'm excited about the future because I'm only going to work with people that I know can get things done.
And that's amazing. It's a great spot to be in, and you get the best results that way too. So
Totally.
to the people, I'm going to have this in the show liner as well, but where can everybody find you?
Thepovertysolution.com.
Excellent. And did you want to mention circles again, or for anybody else that is that?
Well, if you want to look at circles, it's circlesusa.org. You can also find me. I think there's an author page. We're retooling a lot of things right now, but if you look, Scott C. Miller, Poverty, you can Google that up. Books will show up, things will show up. You and I are getting a book out there, so
Yep,
we'll have
we
that.
are.
So, okay, that's how they can get a hold of us.
That's amazing. Did you? I love having you on here, and I know we're gonna have you back, and we're gonna have some updates for how the Tennessee thing went, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we're definitely gonna want updates. But is there anything that you wanted to leave off on, or say anything to the fancy folk listening?
Well, I've always thought that we can and we should end poverty, and I think it's still true. We can if we want to. It's about leadership, and it's about people, caring enough to find their way to. It's not just. It's helpful to give people food. It's helpful to do all those things, but what really will help a lot of people is getting into the conversations with political leaders and others who can see that there is a different way that's being built out through us and through other groups too. I mean, just to start thinking about how do we reorganize society so it serves all of its citizens, we don't need another feudal system. We left that in Europe. Why recreate it here?
Yeah, right. Amazing.
That's all I have to say.
I love it. You said a lot.
And for now.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I got all the faith in the world in what you guys are doing. And ladies and gentlemen, definitely check them out. I mean, if you know anybody, or if you're in a situation yourself, and you've got access to your community, you want to talk, even if you just take a look at the website, there's a lot of material out there that can help. There's some great ideas. And at the end of the day, we do want to make change. I mean, we're sitting here right now, shaking our fist at the cloud when we have the opportunity to be the voice that we desperately need. It has been said that the only person that's coming to save you is the person that's completely sick of your own shit. And that's you. And that applies to you when it comes to things like this. Everybody's doing their part. Everyone's doing their piece. But you, the listener, if there's something that you want to actuate on, if it's poverty is related to this, hit the website, check it out, do some research. There are answers. There are solutions. If it's just for you and your family, there are answers and there are solutions. And they're usually held within. When it's on a broader and more communal scale, there are groups, there are connections that need to hear your 2 cents as well. You're worth it. You've got the energy. You've got the essence. This world is waiting on you to step up. So I will say that, and I'll also leave you with this, ladies and gentlemen, in the infamous words of Red Green, keep your stick on the ice.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Stay connected with us directly through the mentalmasteryalliance.com. You can also join the discussion on Instagram at instagram.com/the Mental Mastery Alliance. Let the team know you're listening by using the hashtag TMMA or tagging us at the Mental Mastery Alliance. To have your voice heard on the show, leave a voicemail or send a text to 647-338-1265. Long distance charges may apply. If you love us, leave us a review. If you hate us, you spend your time in weird ways, but also leave a review. Every review on iTunes tickles the algorithm, helping us grow. Until next time, unity over division. This concludes the most surreal portion of your day.
You got it, Pontiac.